All right, so it's 3:59. You guys just want to start anyway? We're going to steal a minute from Comic Fest.
Yeah.
You guys feeling good about that?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do the thing, TJ.
Don't tell me what to do. You're not my real dad. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. Thanks for being here. I am not Alonzo Nunez, as the sign says outside.
I am Liam Sharp, though, so that's
there you go. So I think everybody knows each other now. So I'm TJ Shevlin. I teach at Little Fish Comic Studio, where Alonzo is based out of. I work for Super 7, and I love comic books, so that's why we're here. So I think we all love comic books as well. So and with us is Liam Sharp. How you doing, man?
very well. I love this show. It's always good to be back here.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite little shows because it's properly about the comics. And you always get a good amount of time with like legends like Bill Stout, who's one of my favourite people. It's nice because you have time to properly talk to people and catch up. You're not feeling pressured all the time.
It's kind of nice to be able to do shows like this, especially because it's not just like herding cattle. It's okay, cool, you got to meet this person, off you go. You get some time to really kind of talk about not just their career, but what it meant to you, especially
right.
You as a reader who became a creator. So that's super cool, man. So yeah, let's dive in. So I'm kind of freeform on this one right now, guys. Like I said, I'm a substitute teacher today. But let's talk about how you got started, man.
Oh wow, how far do we want to go back?
Whatever is best for you.
I think, anybody who ends up in this business starts as a fan, of course. How else do you find comics? But I think growing up in the 70s in England, the idea of actually doing it seemed like a faint and distant dream, and especially coming from a working class background. It was a very industrial Midland town, and the arts were the furthest thing away from anyone's kind of thinking, particularly back in that time. Thankfully, things have really changed. But I had amazing parents who knew I loved comics, and they saw a facility in me when I was very young. So they kind of really supported that. My dad could have been a great artist, but his parents just didn't understand what possible application it would be for that from those times. So he was always like, for my kids, I'm going to have a different view and I'm going to support them, which is I'm very thankful for. But so I can't remember the first comics I came across. I think it might have been a Daredevil, which I've looked at the date, and that was 67, which is like a year before I was born. But it was one of them, Matt Murdock, with his twin brother and Stiltman.
Michael Murdock,
yeah,
right?
Michael Murdock, who's been all the hipster kind of calling everyone cat and groovy and ridiculous glasses.
All those cool Marvel writers who were really fingers were on the pulse of how everybody talked.
Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those, and I just carried on reading them. I carried on sticking with it, and I ended up when I was 9, the equivalent of junior school. My teachers basically said, you've got to do something with this kid. He's just drawing all the time, and he should be pushed, and he should be taken notice of. And this preposterously named thing called the Gifted Children Society. I always hate that. The idea of being a gifted child. Never be a gifted child is horrible. It's like the expectations are ridiculous on you forever after that, including your own life. But anyway, through that, there was a former headmaster of a public school down in Eastbourne, which was boarding school. It was basically Hogwarts. I got a scholarship to this place, which was crazy. So the first sort of working class kid being surrounded by Arabian princes and Nigerian princes and people from all over the world. It was really exotic, and I really was Harry Potter very much. I was the outsider, muggle kid in the school. But it was there that my art teacher, basically through a friend of a friend when I was 17, he heard that Don Lawrence, who I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he was an absolutely legendary artist from Europe and England in particular. mostly famous in Holland, where they made him a knight. But an incredible artist. He did a thing called the Trigon Empire, which I had absolutely loved when I was a kid. I used to read it in Look and Learn magazine. They've just done a beautiful collected edition, which is well worth seeking out, from Fleetway. And he was looking for an assistant. I showed him my work when I was 17. He liked it. He gave me a 3-week tryout over the summer, and that was it. I finished school at 18, went straight to work with Don Lawrence for a year as his assistant, and that was my way in. And everyone's way in is different. I always tell people this. People ask you, how did you get into comics? Nobody has the same story, because there isn't a way in. It's like a mystical door that opens randomly in 1,000 different ways, and you just have to keep a kind of an eye out for it. And that's actually almost the same all the way through any kind of freelance career. You just have to wait for those weird little mystical doors to open and dive in. Jam your foot in there quickly before it shuts again. But yeah, Don was amazing. I worked with Don for a year. He taught me lots of stuff. And in the time I was there, he kind of decided he didn't, because he was training me to paint like him, so he wanted to step away and kind of slowly go into retirement, and he realised he didn't really want to do that. and so then he just helped me get my own sort of style going, and put me in touch with 2000 AD. I turned up to those offices, and they gave me a 2-page story to try out, and that was it.
Your 2000 AD stuff really, it's kind of cool, because I mean, clearly you're starting out pretty early over there, so it's, I'm sure at that point for you it must have been kind of mind-blowing, but I mean, you're working with John Wagner, you're working with Alan Grant, like, I mean, and Alan Grant, I mean, first preface, my favorite Batman writer of all time, and when you're a kid and all you know is his Batman stuff, and then you get to that Judge Dredd stuff, and you're just, I mean, what must have that been like for you, man?
It was incredible, but it was also, I mean, that book was 2000 AD back in 87, which is the year that I first appeared in it. It was selling 120,000 copies a week, which by today's standards is an insane amount. It's a huge amount. So everybody knew it. And one of the best, one of my earliest experiences of what that actually meant as a creator, and I was 18 still. I was in Oxford Street, moved to London, and I went in HMV, and I was with my mum, and I was buying a CD of something or other, probably Rush or something like that. I went to pay for it, and I got my credit card, and the girl behind the counter said, "Not the Liam Sharp of 2000 AD fame." Nice. My legs just buckled, and I thought, "Whoa, why yes." That would be me. It was just,
Is that like, and that was like the first, like, oh my god, like someone knows my work moment?
Yeah, but
man.
The Liam Sharp.
That's awesome, man.
Well, again, everything was so different then. You had no sense of like what your audience were or who you were reaching. So I didn't know. I did a character called PJ Maybe, which I created with John Wagner. It turned out that character really struck a chord and had become super popular with the fan base. And I think he's still considered the number 3 top Dredd villain. It's a big deal in England. And I just had no sense of that at all. Until, again, they had the conventions, the UCAT conventions in London. And Frank Plowright used to get, that's all every year he got absolutely shattered sort of in this, what was a great convention. But he always did this opening ceremony, which was great. It was a really good idea. He got all the creators one by one to introduce themselves and introduce them to everyone who was attending. So everyone had a sense of who everyone was, which was good. But he didn't know who I was. I told him, he said, "Oh, Liam Sharp, 2000 AD." And I got a standing ovation. I could not believe it.
How old were you at this point?
19? 18, 19. It's just crazy. And I can't, you can't even put those kinds of things into words. Because again, you're at home on your own working. So there is a sense of like, how much sort of inspiration that gives you when you interact with fans like that. And you know you've struck a chord. It's profound, and you do kind of you miss it when it disappears, which of course it does.
Yeah.
Careers fail. Of course they do. I mean, it's not that you like become a kind of like you live by it or anything.
Sure.
It doesn't drive you, but it's always anytime anything like that has happened, it's taken me by surprise. But to get it that young, with no sense of it, that was weird.
I mean, at 18, I can't even remember what the hell I was doing, but it wasn't getting standing ovations. So it certainly is one of those things where you kind of look back on it, I'm sure. And I mean, what a great way to kind of start a career that becomes as long as yours does too.
Yeah, slightly terrifying too.
Sure, no pressure, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're always having to live up to stuff.
Well, it's kind of cool because I had said to you earlier that there was a comic that I wanted to bring up for sure, and after that, I mean, Death's Head 2. Like, let's talk about that, man. Like, that was when I was a kid, so that's what got to be 90, 91, right?
Yeah. So
and I remember that coming over to the States, and just that was some of the coolest looking stuff when I was in my formative comic years.
Well, being straight out of school and going straight into comics, and I was working with Andy. We had a studio with Andy Lanning, who went on to do all sorts of things, with Guardians of the Galaxy, and did a lot of writing with Dan Abnett. And Andy actually inked Death's Head too. But we used to share a studio in Islington, and then we kind of drifted apart. I moved back up to Derby and bought a house there, which I shouldn't have done. I should have stayed in London, and then proceeded to completely mess up my life completely. Just being too young, I didn't know I had to pay tax. Can you believe that? That's naive I was, and nobody told me. And you just kind of go to work and get your.
And then that's.
And then suddenly you're like, a few years in, and you've never paid any tax. You go, what do you mean tax? I don't know. Nobody told me. What do you mean? Haven't you got an accountant? Why do I need an accountant? Accountant. Just
the things you should learn in school, not
You should just be told. You should.
Yeah.
It was shocking. I mean, the funny thing was they came after me. The IRS came after me, and they found me at Marvel UK. And I'd earned so little that they owed me money.
Fantastic.
So it turned out all right in the end. And I got myself an accountant. I got myself sorted out, and I started growing up a little bit. But even then, so by the time I got to Marvel UK, I'd kind of had a really rough year of messing everything up and messing up my finances and not really knowing how to sell myself. When you're in London, you can go to the offices, and you can go to Marvel UK, you can go to Fleetway, you can turn up to the events and everything. As soon as you get like a distance away and pre-internet and everything, it became much harder to sort of get the work. I didn't even know how to go about it, and I was a really shy kid as well. So that was not easy for me. I was always relying on the word to sort of speak for me. So I moved back to London, and that's when I met Paul Neary and also my wife there. So she was working at Marvel, so it was a really big move for me. He was doing, Paul Neary had taken over Marvel UK, and he was trying to shake it up. And we must all know Paul Neary's amazing work from back in the Warren days, Hunter, and then he became a seminal inker on Alan Davis and Excalibur stuff. And Paul was, he'd done everything as a writer. He'd done that Great Shield trade series, which has actually affected I think it was the Winter Soldier stories, largely based on that.
Yeah. It's kind of the precursor to all that stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm. So Paul had taken over as the editor-in-chief, and I loved that guy. He was great. He just filled the place with young people, and the energy there was fantastic. And it was just all about, what was happening at Marvel US at that time was you got Will Tassia, Jim Lee, and Mark Silvestri, and they had created this, everyone calls it the Image style now, it wasn't, it was the in-house Marvel style at that time. And it was very much sort of based on, especially Jim stuff when he was doing the Savage Land thing, just beautiful. And it was based on Barry Smith, of all people. He was really the inspiration to a lot of those guys.
It's cool to see he did those handful of uncannies just before, like Life Death.
Life Death.
Yeah, which is super cool. If you've never read any of that.
Beautiful stuff. And then, of course, he was doing Weapon X at the same time as well. So Paul was like, look at the. I had fallen in love with European comics at that time, so I'd been doing 2000 AD, but I had an eye on Europe. I was a big fan of Heavy Metal magazine, this and Drew and Liberatory and Rank Xerox, all of that crazy stuff. So I really imagined that my future was going to be in Europe. But then I met Paul, and he showed me all of this amazing Marvel stuff that was happening then, and I just fell in love with what Jim was doing and what Mark Silvestri was doing. I got it, immediately got it. And I felt I can emulate this, which was what Paul wanted. He wanted us to kind of do a British version that was in the style of the Marvel US, but with a little bit of an edge. So we just kind of brought the slight hyper-violence of that 2000 AD Brick sensibility to it, but then with that very polished sort of Scott Williams type finish. And Paul was looking at Death Set, and he felt that the old design. I know a lot of people fight over this still to this day. Which one? So many people love the old version, and so many people love the new version. But he wanted to do something that was more contemporary and had a bit more kind of teeth to it, I guess. And I literally went home that night. He was showing me the Death Set stuff, and I got home that night, did a sketch, and it was just my first rough of the Death Set. And I faxed it to him and said, I always thought Death Set should look something like this. And then he fired the whole team and put me on it, which was like, Simon's forgiven me now, thank God. But it's like one of those things where you feel terrible, but it's also at the same time it kind of completely kick-started my career. So.
Well, I mean, look at how long-lasting it was. Like there are people who look at a lot of that period, and to a certain audience, it is certainly the Image style. But then, to anybody who's really reading that Marvel stuff before those guys went off and did it, it's very much the in-house Marvel style. So there are some who are going to say, oh, well, it's kind of a product of its time. But I mean, Hasbro, even just a year or two ago, did a Death's Head 2 action figure. And I mean, I can't even remember the last time that character was used, like in the Marvel Universe proper. And here he is in Walmart and Target. And I mean, what must that have been like for you?
Exactly the same design as well.
Yeah, like there's not a change through it.
No, the design seems to have lasted. I know they did a series fairly recently. I think they've done a couple in the last 8 or 9 years. I did some covers for it. I don't know why they put it under the Guardians of the Galaxy banner. I keep thinking it's going to pop up in the film or something.
I mean, part of me, I'm assuming, because of Abnett and Landing, obviously, and the stuff that they were doing, and such a familiarity. But, I mean, that also kind of would have been amazing to have seen Death's Head 2 in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, although what a tonal shift that would have been. So.
Yeah, I actually posted a tweet yesterday because someone had pointed out that the year Death's Head 2 was created was 2020. And we're in that year, which is
it's kind of like the
so
whole
I'm kind of expecting him to just burst through the wall.
Iron Man 2020 is just Iron Man now, like that sort of thing. So, but that's cool because I mean that kind of material led to you getting a lot more kind of that Marvel US work, Venom with Carl Potts, which awesome, X-Men Unlimited, Incredible Hulk, obviously, and like on that Peter David stuff too, which is still like super seminal for that character at that period.
Yeah, that was tough. I think I really loved doing Death's Head, and God, so many things happened at that time that I don't know whether I necessarily made the right decision. Now I look back, I think I did, but when I was doing Death's Head, we came out to San Diego for the first time. I met Jim Lee for the first time, and he offered me a chance to move to La Jolla and join the Image gang, and I thought that Marvel UK was going to stay, keep growing, not just implode. So I turned down that and a ridiculous page rate, and then it did all implode. So I kind of missed that chance, but I'm here now. So I got to come and live in California after all, which is something I'd always regretted, but probably always wanted to do since I was a kid. Really, watching old Elvis movies, kind of listening to rock and roll seemed like the place to be.
I feel like it's why most of us end up moving over here anyway.
Right.
So
it's Hollywood. It's like everything. It's the sun. It's the
Yep.
It's never like that. The reality is just me and a drawing board and
still at the table.
Yeah. Exactly. But but it totally opened those gates. Of course, doing the X-Men, because I did the Unlimited and I also did issue 35, I think, which I really enjoyed. And then the Hulk came along. That was crazy, but also terrifying because you'd had two incredibly sort of iconic runs directly, actually three, because you had McFarlane's run was incredible. I loved the McFarlane Peter David run. I loved the Dale Keown one. And then Gary Frank, who's from the same stable, straight out of Marvel UK. Gary's stuff there, the faces in particular, the acting was
not to veer off, but the work particularly that he does on Supergirl, I think is some of his strongest facial acting as far as
he's so good at it. Even what he's doing in the Doomsday Clock, it's like the way he makes the mime character act. We're getting sidetracked here, but
well, I mean,
but he's just brilliant.
Anybody who can make Superman look like Christopher Reeve and you totally buy into it, it's 100%.
No, it was pretty intimidating following those guys, and I knew that I had to do something fresh. Otherwise, it's too easy to try and be a Dale Keown light or a Gary Frank light and try and emulate what they were doing. And I just thought, no, I can't. So I kind of mixed a few sensibilities up there with it. I think at that point, that's when I started being associated with Simon Bisley a little bit, because those elements of like him and Glenn Fabry, I think, were probably two of the largest influences on me on that run, mixed with, again, some of the image style stuff. So it was a bit of a mishmash, and I think I got a little bit intimidated by the whole thing. To me, when I look back at that run, I feel like I'm very unsure about my style, and I hadn't quite nailed it, and I hadn't got enough kind of guts to just go with what I do. So I was still trying I was trying to ride on the coattails, I think, of some bigger names in the hope that it would.
Well, even looking at that cover, I mean, it's a little bit of Will Spartasio there, which is a little bit of Jim Lee in that, so it kind of gloms one off of the other there. But I mean, if especially at that point too, if you're getting that kind of work, I mean, no one can really blame you for trying to move somewhere into that style where the work is going to be consistent at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, you're reaching, you're trying to be good, but it's having faith in yourself. I mean, one of the things that I tell aspiring artists now is like, don't try to create your style ahead of the drawing. Concentrate on really good drawing and really good storytelling first, and the style will find you, not the other way around. If you try and emulate a style that's successful, you're going to fail, because it might superficially look like that person, but you won't have the chops, you won't have the storytelling chops, you won't have the pacing, you won't have the basic drawing skills required. So it's much better to really concentrate on those first and not worry about whether you're cool or whether you're relevant or any of those kinds of things. And I'm still telling myself that.
Well, it seems to work to your advantage too. I mean, as you get through that, then your work really starts to move, work with Alan Grant again, doing a couple different Batman things, but there's a lot of heavy work with James DeMatteis, which, I mean, between both Spider-Man and Man-Thing, and Spider-Man, I'm sure, ticks a box for almost everybody, but then there's something about Man-Thing where you get to kind of peel back a couple layers and what kind of storyteller you want to be.
Spider-Man editorial had a strong sense of what they wanted, so they were always pulling back the more, to me, the more interesting side of what it could have been. So, for instance, when I had the clone being born, I gave him really long fingernails and super long hair and a big beard. It's like grown super fat. Why wouldn't he? He would have that. But they're like, no, he's got to come out looking like a young Peter Parker. He's got to look exactly like Peter Parker, which made no sense to me. I think I took it to stubble, and they even made me get rid of the stubble. So there was things like that, because they had, I guess when you've got something like, when you've got a character like Peter Parker, there will be times when it's really important that you stay on the style sheet, and you keep it a certain look, a certain kind of likeness, he's not Batman.
Yeah.
No. So when it came to then doing Man-Thing, that was a whole other thing. I mean, for a start, they were pitching it at an older age group. So we had, there was more kind of adult content in it, which was toned down, because then they got a little bit nervous about putting it out at that age group, and suddenly decided they wanted it to be kid-friendly again. But because we'd approached it in that way, it had this very sort of EC quality to it, and the people that were inspiring the work on that were more like Jeff Jones, who I absolutely adore Jeff Jones, Frazetta, and the EC artists in general, but also very, very heavily Bill Sienkiewicz was a huge influence on that book, especially his Dark Knight, his Moon Knight stuff, which was just the Hit It story from Moon Knight. If you know that story, is just like fantastic story. That was seminal to me when I saw that. It changed everything. It was just like, I found it randomly in a little sort of corner shop. It's just this one issue. Like, what the hell am I looking at?
That's kind of the fun part about that stuff is it's the comic that you're meant to find.
Right.
Yeah, it's very much kind of your building block as a creator.
Yeah, Bill for me is still about the best you can be, best as possible to be. But so, you know, that book I see that book now as being the first series I did where I was becoming what I am now, artistically. I think my approach to it, I was really, really putting a lot of thought into the storytelling. I was stepping back a little bit from grandstanding. The Image days and the Marvel early 90s days there was a lot of grandstanding. It was all about posture and the big characters and full-page splashes, and it was all very kind of dynamic and pumped up and everything, which was fun, but you can only do that for a certain amount of time before you kind of go, yeah, that was fun, but let's get back to some really sort of solid storytelling, because that's always going to be timeless. So for Man-Thing, I really put a lot of thought into the layouts, pushing the kind of envelope with the, you know, again, taking a leap away from like what Bill was doing and where he was being inspired by fine art. I was being inspired by certain fine artists as well, you know, Klimt. I was doing sort of Klimt-like layouts and quite psychedelic layouts for it, but also some very, very solid panel-to-panel, 16-panel pages and stuff that was really servicing the story and not about trying to show off as an artist. And that's another thing that it took a while to realise, you know, the main thing about comics, the storytelling is more important than the art. Always, always. Good storytelling will trump great art. If the art's great but there's no sort of flow, then you're not telling the story, you're just getting in the way of it. So I really learned that working with DeMatteis, and we had an amazing time. I love Mark.
Well, he's also one of those writers who seems to be able to write anybody, and it never feels off.
Right.
Everybody always feels like the way they're supposed to be. So that's always super cool.
He was really generous too. So he would, if I had an idea, there was an idea like in issue 1. There's a bit where at the end, Doctor Strange turns up, and in the script it was originally a very kind of superhero-ish image with a ball of power around him and bullets that had been shot, sort of exploding on this power bubble. And I said to him, well, can't we just have the bullets turn into butterflies before they hit her? You know? He said, I love it. It's like, great.
No, I'm sorry. Please.
No, that was
it's pretty great when you look at your career trajectory, because you really end up working with every period that you're in. You seem to be working with the best of the best writers. I mean, Justin Grange, Meme Palmiotti, you know, you get to work with guys like them who are just, you know, in my opinion, some of the best workhorses in comics. Abnett and Lanning, I mean, what else can you say about how good their work was? So
to a large extent, though, we all came up together. You know, we all knew each other. So you know, Jimmy was a big friend of Garth Ennis, and we were all at Garth's wedding together, and so there was always this kind of cross culture between the US creators and the English creators, and the world was changing too, because we were starting to come across. I remember being at UCAC in '87 when Karen Berger came over for the first time. Karen Berger. Is it Berger or Berger?
Berger, I believe, yeah.
And the buzz in the, because we had a green room at the, we had a comics green room, which was actually a room that had actual food in. And we were all, and you're in there, and there's Brian Bolland, and there's John Higgins, and there's Dave Gibbons, and there's all those young punk kids as well, you know. And the buzz is going around the room, Karen's coming, you know, and it's like, and Vertigo is like such a big deal. Everyone wanted to get something under her nose, you know. In fact, I did a Dread story with Berger block written on one of the buildings.
I mean, especially at that point, you want to be in some way, shape, or form associated with Vertigo. I mean,
right.
It was.
Well, that was the Brit. That was that's what you did. You went 2000 AD Vertigo. So that was the through line. So we did start sort of mingling a little bit, and then, you know, I came with Death's Head. We came to San Diego for the first time in I think '91, '92. And none of us could believe it, because none of us could imagine that was like even a possible, that was a thing that comics would facilitate.
Yeah.
That, you know. So you're going from the working class kid in the Midlands watching Elvis movies to, you know, actually being in California for the first time. It was astonishing. It was amazing.
First time you see a palm tree.
And I took a boat out as well. Powerboat was ridiculous. So I just totally off the subject, but one of our friends had taken a powerboat out on the bay. And I thought, oh, we should do it. Like a child, you know, no idea. I grew up on the canals in England, and that means that I was used to driving narrowboat. So I had to answer this questionnaire, and it go through, and they said, so what's the biggest boat you've piloted? 72 foot. What's the biggest boat you've moored? 72 foot. All true, but it only goes 4 miles an hour on a canal. And I had been in like, and also when I was at the posh school, we used to have to be in the Corps, which was just, so they had the military. I picked the Navy one because that was the slacker one. And we all had to pretend to be in the military once a week and march around and wear scrub boots and, you know, fire tutus. So he said, well, have you had any navigation practice? I said, well, I was in the Naval Corps. So my wife arrives just as he's saying, well, if you were in the Navy then, take it away. She's like, what?
Disaster.
It was fine. I took it out, but I totally didn't know how to do the navigation. They lost us on the radio channel, eventually found us and said, where are you? Oh, sorry, I must have knocked it, you know. But yeah, we were fine. We took it out for 4 hours. I burnt my nose off. It literally fell off in one piece. It was like, but it was amazing.
So you get to a certain point where, I mean, you're working pretty consistently. You're doing work with like Dynamite. You're doing some work with DC, stuff like that. But then you get to a point where you ended up. It seemed like there was a period where you kind of left comics behind, you know, until Made Fire.
Well. It's not always by choice, you know. Sure. Sometimes, I mean, print was, especially in the late 90s, it just was getting tough. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were falling by the wayside. I had a year where I kept pitching and it kept seeming like something was going to happen. I worked it out once. If you had added up all of these mini-series that I pitched, or series, it was something like 36 years of work and about 12 different series. I pitched, and you know, as a freelancer, that's what you have to do. You finish on whatever job you're doing. I'd finished Spawn Dark Ages. I'd done a Superman graphic novel, and then suddenly there was just nothing.
Another one with James Donatis?
Yeah. But after that, literally every single thing I pitched suddenly just didn't happen. And then after a year, I earned $6,000 in this 1 year, and like an idiot, I didn't sign up for any sort of help or anything. So we lost our house, and we had to move to a cheaper area, and had to rethink kind of everything. And I tried to get on illustration books, and at that time things were quite different. They wouldn't take comic strip artists to illustration agencies in England. It was that bad, it was that snobby. It's like, you don't understand, I can draw anything in any style, because that's what I've been doing. It's like, yeah, but you do comics, we're not interested. So it was rough, and then it was like, the other thing that also happens, not through anybody's real fault, is that the longer you're not on the shelf, unintentionally or otherwise, people start to think there must be a reason, and they come working. These negative memes get out, and then you hear whispers, and then you get paranoid, and then you get a little bit desperate, and then you're aware that you're desperate, and there's nothing that's going to send people running like a faint whiff of desperation. It's not good. It's not a good look, but it's also very, very hard to suppress. So then it was like, okay, well, what can we do to fix this? And me and my wife set up a boutique publishing company. I thought, well, we'll publish our own. And so we set up Mantor Publishing, and we published quite a bunch of stuff actually. We published two 200-page anthologies called Event Horizon, which had some great artists in it. And it had a mix of unknown and known creators. And it sold like 3,500 copies, which was not bad. Didn't make any money because of the cost for marketing and all of these things that you learn about. But it showed that we could get a publication out, that we could organise a team of creators, that we could inspire people, and that we could introduce the industry to a whole load of new people. Dave Kendall came out of that, and he's just been doing amazing stuff, first on Magic Cards, and then for 2000 AD, the Death World, I think it's called. Really brilliant stuff. And a bunch of other people. Chris Weston did an amazing, really funny psychedelic story in it. Bisley had a showcase in there. Glenn Fabry had a showcase in there. It was a really, really good anthology. And I've also always written. So we published a couple of novels, and then we published mine because I didn't want to put mine first, because I didn't want it to seem like a vanity publishing company. So we published my God Killers novel, which got 2 print runs. It went out through one of the major book chains in the UK and did really well. It got good reviews. So it's funny, sometimes without necessity, you're kind of pushed into a corner, and it's like, what are you going to do? I was never going to get a job at the local bank. I can't add up the fingers on my left hand. There was very little for me to do except to do creative stuff. So I'd always wanted to write a novel. I wrote a novel. I wanted to publish my own material. I published my own material, and it span out into an amazing experience actually. So we published a bunch of stuff with that, and then the problem with it was that print was getting ridiculously hard to put out. It was a tough proposition. So then I just thought, okay, we're right on the cusp of the iPhone coming out. The internet is clearly starting to speed up. Everyone's online now, and you've got Warren Ellis doing his Engine site, which was really interesting, and was putting people together and getting creators in a space talking about how they're going to make things. And I just started thinking, there's got to be somewhere online that's cheaper, that we don't have the issue with having to print and having all of those costs, that we can still showcase great talent. So I was trying to really think, how do we take Mantor Publishing into a digital space? The problem is then you've got, how do you stop people pirating PDFs? So that was part of the question was what can you make that's embedded within it that makes it worth
kind
buying?
Of useless without the software.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and really the thinking was, you know, if it's just still, that would be easy. You could just screen cap it, but you want people to buy it because you want the creators to get some money out of it. That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then that became a proposition. I talked to a lot of creators at various conventions about it in England, and then I met an old friend of mine from Eastbourne, actually, who was also from the same school, a chap called Ben Wolstenholme, and he was the CEO of a big branding agency in London called Moving Brands, and we got back together. He was a really talented artist, always wanted to tell stories, and so we started talking up this idea about a digital. I always imagined it would be Mamtor, like a digital version of that, but he had this company parked up called Madefire, and he sort of grabbed the reins as CEO and went out to raise money, and we sort of eventually ended up in California. This is where we got backed by True Ventures.
Would you say Madefire kind of reignited your passion for making comics?
The passion was there because I was still doing, you know, I had things were actually picking up. So
okay.
Mamtor Publishing had got some really good press.
Mm-hmm.
I did some big, like, Time Out magazine. They worked with Mamtor, and we did a comic spread in the middle of Time Out that was quarterly for a year, and that was amazing because I had like huge distribution. And again, it was the same creators, so people like Chris Weston and John McRae, and you know, there was some really good talent in there. And again, Dave Kendall did a brilliant story in there. So we were getting seen, and it was working almost like an agency model as well as a publishing model. So 2000 AD were taking notice of these guys, yeah, I mean, interesting things were happening. I did a couple of major Coca-Cola campaigns off the back of that, so it was starting to get me noticed again and get all these other creators noticed. But I think with Madefire, it was a whole other opportunity to do something really exciting and to try something new in this new space, because iPads had come out, and that was obviously a good place to put a magazine onto there.
For sure. It's where it was going. So.
Yeah, and I strongly felt, although I'm a paper guy, I read books, I love comics. I still strongly felt that no matter what you think about digital, we should be in control of it. You know, not some other outside force. Mm-hmm. So although I could understand that the retailers felt threatened and were worried, I still felt that us as creators should have we should be in control of it, not just some outside, you know, developer that had no history of comics and no knowledge of it and no sense of what it would be, that would just sort of storm in and take the whole thing over. So I was quite passionate about that, and thankfully, you know, we had people like Dave Gibbons and Bill Sienkiewicz who sort of got behind what we were doing as well. So we had a real great roster of talent, and it really definitely helped us at the outset.
Well, it's kind of cool too. I mean, getting to do Sherlock Holmes with Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes has got to be a smart move because it's public domain,
right?
And so it's a nice sort of it's a nice way to frame. Here's this thing that you know. Come and check out what we're doing with it, and you've got, you know, Bill's name on there. I mean, it really is a smart move for this.
It was the best time because Bill came to the studio. We put him up in a hotel. I'll drive by, swing by the hotel, pick him up, take him to Madefire. We just took over the whole section at the back, just throwing stuff out. It was amazing. So I was penciling it, I was throwing it to Bill. He's inking it, and then I was colouring it, and then we were sticking it all up on the wall. It was like. We had 3 weeks just doing this. Fantastic time.
I mean, that must have been special too, coming off of all that Moon Knight stuff.
Amazing.
You know, that so meaningful to you, and then you think about like what he's doing on New Mutants back in the day, and now you kind of get to have a little bit of
so just, you know,
that with
having
him there.
that time with Bill, and you know, having him to yourself to pick his brain and talk about music, you know, just like amazing time. Very, very thankful for that. And we've got to do a print version of that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of what we did digitally, but I still know there's a lot of people who'd love to see that in print.
For sure.
So, I need to prod a few people and get that book out.
I know they're gonna start telling us, they're gonna start giving us the signals. We still have some time, but I'm gonna move a little bit into, we'll talk a little bit about Wonder Woman Rebirth, and then I wanna get to Green Lantern, because that's a lot of fun right now. Greg Rucka, I mean, one of those guys gets as prolific as it gets on Wonder Woman, so I mean, getting a relaunch her with him, how was that?
Changed my life.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would say.
It was, so as Rob's going off to interview Bill now. So, already? Crikey. Okay, how do I whiz through this? Yeah, I drew Wonder Woman.
Yay! And really, I have to say, coming off of everything that was happening with the character before, you were doing really character redefining stuff. Like it was you and Greg were doing stuff where this is who she is. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to drive the car. But let's shine the light a little differently as well.
Yeah. Well, originally it was a different writer too. So originally it was going to be me and another writer, and then Greg was brought in by Jeff Johns, and then they decided it was going to be 2 issues a month. So then Greg brought in Nicola, who is now one of my best friends in the industry. I love her to bits. But I was meant to be doing year 1, and then Nick came in, and it's like I saw her work and I saw mine, and it's like, oh bollocks! It's got to be Nick.
It's stunning.
Nick's got to do year 1 because she's just right for the.
It's the bright and the sunny
and the kind of the happy. My stuff is not that.
A little muddy there, yeah, for sure.
So it's like, damn it, I've got to give up a year 1. Everyone wants a year 1, but it was the right thing to do. And like I say, Nick and I just became great friends off the back of that anyway.
I do want to kind of shuttle to Green Lantern a bit, just because I mean it's so current. It is so what you're doing, and one of the things that's great about your work on that, I mean, obviously working with Grant Morrison, I mean, how do you not love that? But when you look at a lot of stuff that Grant does that isn't the traditional superhero work, you can see him pulling that love for EC and all of that, and it's what's great about what you're doing on there is. It's Wally Wood and it's Al Williamson. It's that EC, sci-fi stuff in there, and you're getting to do a cool cop book.
Grant said it's like European comics, English comics, and American mainstream comics got together, had a threesome, and this is their strange bastard offspring. And it's kind of right. I love it because every single issue gives me a chance to delve into stuff that I'm passionate about, and as you say, all of the things that informed me early on. And it's very old school. I think where I've been really lucky is I've been able to do a book which is essentially very old-fashioned. In a time when there hasn't been anything like that for a long time, so it looks new, it looks different, it looks fresh.
What you haven't seen is new to you, essentially. Right. Yeah. It's so nice to be able to see that. It's nice to see a Green Lantern book that isn't tied to here's what's going on Earth in the DC universe. It's like Green Lantern kind of be wide and out there and do all the different things and still have a bit of that like police procedural.
But it's also it's playing to, it's John Broome and it's like Bill Kane and it's
the core.
And even Carmen Infantino and some of there's so many people that we've referenced with that. And of course the Neil Adams,
the
Denny O'Neil,
Car Traveling Heroes,
exactly. So which is a very pointed reference. But we've had a lot of fun with that.
Is there anything as far as your career trajectory goes? Anything that you haven't worked on yet, like a character or a concept that like you really kind of want to sink your teeth into?
So the one character I always wanted to do was Conan.
I was hoping you were going to say Space Cabbie, but I mean Conan's good too.
Right, and the funny thing is, I got offered Conan and was going to do it, and then I was offered Wonder Woman at the same time, and I thought about it for about 30 seconds because I thought you can go from Wonder Woman to Conan, but you can't go from Conan to Wonder Woman.
For sure.
You certainly couldn't back then. It might be slightly different now because obviously that's gone on to become a very very successful title again. So we've got a minute, 1 minute.
So Conan would be the big one for you?
I wonder,
Yeah.
because again, that was the other thing, when I thought about Wonder Woman, I thought, what are all the things about Conan that I like? And a lot of it is just the environment and the chance to do something epic and fantastical and beautiful. And I did a lot of that in Wonder Woman. Then I really did it in The Brave and the Bold with the Batman Wonder Woman series, and that was a huge passion project for me, because that was all the Irish mythology that I'm a big fan of. My father-in-law, who was actually dying that year, he'd been on at me to do an Irish mythology book for the last 25 years, and at least I got, before he died, to say, I'm doing it, I sent him the plot, and all he said was like, where's Cuchulainn?
And you get to do it with Batman and Superman too, which is so cool, because so much of the Irish mythology can be a little daunting for anybody who maybe isn't already inundated to it. So Batman and Superman are an easy kind of way to get your palate ready for that.
Yeah.
Although bizarre,
It seems right for Wonder Woman, because she's from a fantasy. Well, she's from a mythological background, so it's just a different pantheon, but it's still mythology, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's Irish or whether it's Celtic, whether it's Greek or Roman.
So we're getting the wrap-up signal. Can you let everybody know where you're going to be all weekend if they want to ask you questions? Sorry, we didn't get Q&A.
Yeah, I have a panel with Bill actually tomorrow at 12. And after that, at 1, I shall be signing in the dealer's room. I think it says 1 until whenever. So as long as people come up and want to have a chat and talk about stuff, I'll be there to shoot the breeze and sign stuff.
Liam, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, guys.